My name is Wendy Bennett, and I'm the Executive Director for the Farm and Ranch Safety and Health Association. I've been involved in health and safety for just over 20 years in a variety of different capacities, working with employers, both large and small, in various different types of industry. As an employer developing your handbook, it's critical that you address health and safety for your employees. A tragedy can happen on the farm at any time if attention is not paid to the details of safety. I'm going to address the various sections in your handbook on a step-by-step basis as we move forward. In British Columbia, WorkSafe BC governs all workplaces, including agriculture. And it's critical that you are in compliance with all the elements of the Occupational Health and Safety Regulation in addition to the Workers' Compensation Act. Part of the things to consider are all the necessary protective equipment that you may have for your employees and that they are familiar with and comfortable with wearing it. For example, eye protection or hearing protection or rainwear for that matter. All new and young workers have to have an orientation before they start work. Even if they worked for you last year, they need to be reoriented to the site. In addition to that, any new procedures that they may be undertaking may require specific orientation and specific training to ensure ongoing health and safety for them and for everybody they're working with. Some of the things that are important to know is that every worker in the province, in the country even, has a right to know, a right to report, and a right to refuse. And that means reporting unsafe work or unsafe conditions. There is a process you need to develop for your specific location. WorkSafe BC can help you with this, or you can contact FARSHA at any time. As an employer, you want to ensure that your workers go home safe at the end of the day. In the event that they notice an incident or have sustained an injury, it's critical that they report it before they go home at the end of the day. Injuries can usually be treated at the site by the first aid attendant and documented for future follow-up. In the event that they're uncertain as to the ability to care for an injury, then of course 911 or an ambulance is critical. Anytime an incident occurs, it needs to be reported. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. One of the key elements to ensure the safety and well-being of employees is to know that if they are injured, that somebody can care for them. It's a requirement that your location has a first aid attendant and that all employees know who that is and how to contact them. If you need help determining what level of first aid training and first aid equipment you need, WorkSafe BC has a guideline, as does FARSHA, on the website that will help you to determine what level of first aid training you need, how much equipment. It's all based on the number of workers and the distance to a hospital. Remember though, when you're calculating, if you have seasonal workers who are in housing on your location, you have to count them 24 hours a day. So as an employer, you have undoubtedly addressed all of the different hazards that are on your farm or ranch and are fully aware of what you need to stay away from, what things you need special training for, etc. It's critical that if you're going to have any of your workers operating any of that machinery, they too are aware of all the hazards and receive appropriate training to operate the equipment safely. If you have migrant workers whose first language is not English, it's really important that you have somebody available to translate for them. Having safety training done in their own language is critical to success. At an event I participated in, I was taught in Spanish, of which I speak not a word, how to insert earplugs. And I thought she was teaching me how to wash my hands the whole time and had no idea what was intended for me. But she thought I understood, and so that was the end of that. The end result would have been terrible. If your operation has 20 or more employees, not only are you required to have a formal safety program, you also need to have a joint health and safety committee. That's equal representation from workers and from managers who are able to address the safety concerns of the workforce. If you have less than 20 people, between 10 and 19, if you have between 10 and 19 workers, You need to have a safety representative who will represent the workers with safety concerns for management. If you have less than 10 workers, the expectation is that everybody is involved in health and safety at the workplace. It's important that everybody on your site knows who the health and safety representatives are. In some cases, that will be the individual that they will go to when they have a concern, whenever it's about health and safety in general or very specifically. So all workers need to know who they can go to if they have a safety concern. We all know that often you live where you work when you run a farm, and there are special precautions that have to be taken to ensure that your children are safe. Riding on Grandpa's lap on the tractor is no longer a good action to be taken. Too many children end up seriously injured or worse because of heavy equipment. What is a hazard to a child may not appear to be a hazard for an adult. For example, the gate leaning up against the barn that could fall over and completely squash them where it's perfectly safe for you. Animals are unpredictable. It's critical that children are not left around animals unattended or too close, even if they are attended. So take care to have space on your farm that is specifically for children and is away from the hazards of machinery and animals and pools and silos and anything that could hurt them. If families are coming to your farm with children, it's critical that you have a policy in place to ensure that all members of the family know what is safe and what is unsafe, and that your guidelines are strict and well adhered to ensure that children stay safe, whether they're visiting family members who are working there or they're visiting because it's a fun place to be. One of the further health and safety requirements for employers that's new in the province of British Columbia is the prevention of bullying and harassment in the workplace. It's critical, it's necessary that every employer have a policy in place clearly articulating that bullying and harassment will not be tolerated, and that there is a procedure in place for all workers to know how to report bullying or harassment, who to approach, and what they can do if you, the employer, are the one they consider to be the harasser or the bullier. Help is out there, and WorkSafe BC has a fabulous section on their website under worksafebc.com/bullying with toolkit and suggested policy language and lots of good information. Having a safety section in your handbook is key. It's part of due diligence to ensure that if anything does go wrong, you are able to refer back to all the information that you shared to make sure that you did everything in your power to keep your workers safe. Because after all, at the end of the day, we want them to go home healthy and with all the fingers and toes that they came with in the beginning. Health and safety in the workplace can mean the difference between success and failure in a business. Injured workers have claims which cost money, which can affect profitability in a huge way. Injured workers are not happy to be there, and if attention isn't paid appropriately, then others feel the same way and they're not happy to be there. Productivity slows down, morale is poor, and people don't feel that they're cared for. By addressing health and safety from the very beginning and on an ongoing daily basis, workers know that you care about them, their welfare, their well-being, and that you want them to come back the next day and the day after and the day after that. And they will work to do that for you. We were just very fortunate very recently of presenting a certificate of recognition to a very large greenhouse. And when I asked the owner to bring out her team who had worked on it, I anticipated 3 or 4 individuals who I had dealt with quite significantly. When I arrived, she had all her staff, all the Mexican workers that are there every single day. Didn't understand a word of what I said, but she brought out a translator so that they could participate fully in sharing the success of health and safety in that location. It was fantastic. All of the regulation is intended to prevent incidents and injuries from happening in the first place. The biggest step, the most important step any employer can take is to identify the hazards that are on the farm. Figure out what could happen if that hazard were to interact with a human being. So what can we do when we figured that part out to prevent it from causing an injury. So a hazard, for example, would be any machinery that's had a guard taken off of it, because it happens often because guards get in the way and they slow things down, and so people take them off. But now, before you go to use the machinery again, putting the guard back in place can mean that the individual who's operating the machine doesn't end up having their fingers caught in it. Most farms that have a farmer with one less finger have a really good safety plan because they've learned the hard way. The majority of kids who study agriculture and safety at university have had a farm-related accident in their family. So they're well aware from a personal level of what could happen. So by having the prevention in place in the first place, the injuries and the incidents and the deaths don't have to happen, which is what we really want. Safety is a choice, and you need to make the right choice to make sure that working on your farm is a safe place to be for everybody, not just your workers, but yourself and your family as well.